Welcome to A Cup of Gratitude with Amanda Schaefer. Hi, I'm your host, and I'm so glad you stopped by. This podcast is really for anyone, anywhere, anytime. And it's about taking a moment to slow down and look around and actually see all of the good things that are there. There's no question that asks, is your cup half empty or half full? But I think a better question is, what's in your cup? I mean, a drop of gratitude will benefit your life unimaginably more than a full cup of anything else. So let's settle in and take a look at how we can shift our focus and embrace the joy and the wonder of the life that we have. And once you start, you won't be able to stop seeing the good. And just like me, you won't be able to stop talking about it. And somehow that creates even more. Even in the midst of difficulty, even when it's really hard. Learn how to drink from a cup of gratitude. Welcome. Today we are talking with Laura. Having 10 years experience in writing online Bible studies and leading others in discipleship, she and her husband found that they were constantly learning and hungry to grow as followers of Jesus. They had the chance to publish a few of their recent ebooks, Hidden Heroes, How God Uses Everyday People to Change the World, and Almost Heroes, How God's People Can Ruin a Good Thing. Laura has a Master of Arts in Discipleship Ministries, and she is an outgoing introvert who will never turn down a spontaneous and adventurous trip with her family. As a matter of fact, she's on a trip right now, but made time to talk with me. Her lifelong goal is to help more people cultivate peace in their lives by stepping back, slowing down, and serving others. And that's evidenced by a book that she self-published called Loving Fast and Living Slow. And we'll talk about that in a little bit. Welcome, Laura. How are you?
Thank you so much. I am great. I love, like you said, traveling, being able to go see family. We're actually in Tennessee now. I'm from Florida. So It was a bit of a drive, all 3 kids, but we're having a great time up here.
That's awesome. Thanks for making time for me. I'm really looking forward to this. Can you tell us, I'd like to start at the beginning. Can you tell us a little bit about your childhood?
Yeah, I love this question. And the way I see it, I lived a very charmed childhood, but that doesn't mean it came without ups and downs. Everyone's life has their stress points. A lot of what shaped me as a kiddo, I grew up as an army brat. So we lived in Germany for many years, and then we settled in Fort Benning, Georgia, where my dad was stationed. And a lot of my parents' disciplinary methods were very traditional, old school, effective. I hope that I turned out to be a functional adult, but it was very, militant, authoritative. You eat everything on your plate. And I loved that. And I had assumed that I would then be able to carry that into my parenthood experience. And as I'll talk to you later, I've had to rewire my brain a lot. I'm very thankful for my childhood. Speaking of my dad, he also had a rare form of leukemia. He was diagnosed when I was in 5th grade, so that shaped me a lot. It shaped me a lot because I just saw that life is not always peachy. Life is not always easy. People suffer. But what really is one of my fondest memories, I'll say, is growing up, we went to our church and I saw how supportive they are and were when we needed it most. I mean, we were suffering. My parents were struggling. We had to sell our house. My dad had a 30% chance of survival, and they just wrapped us up in their arms. And I have never forgotten it. I'm always grateful. And I love that I've seen that because I know that's what the church is supposed to do.
I love hearing when the church acts like Jesus. I hear so many stories, unfortunately, when people were not treated the right way by the church, and it makes me really sad. I'm glad that was your experience.
Yeah.
Now, you had mentioned to me that your desire for the church is for the church to offer some more opportunities for children with unique abilities like your son. How do you think God is challenging you to step out in this area? And would you mind sharing with the listeners a little bit about your son's unique abilities and that experience?
Yes, I would have been a bit timid to talk openly about this a few years ago, but I'm so glad that God has me now in a place where I kind of see the light at the end of the storm. I see the dust settling, and I feel more equipped or empowered rather by him to speak on behalf of those raising kiddos who are different. So my son, Leland, he just turned 9 last week. He is fantastic and brilliant and funny, but he is also autistic and dyslexic, has dysgraphia, which those two are specific learning disabilities. But what stands out amongst the most is he's autistic. And this was completely, I don't want to use such strong words as earth shattering, because obviously we have learned what it means to be autistic. We have learned that the brain works differently. We're stronger for it. But it really was life changing when we found out through a long, hard process that, your son is different and this is not fixable. And really, I grew up, that was the hardest part as a mom. Like, I wanted to fix it. What could I do? What could I control? And God said, I have set him apart before the world began. I mean, that, and I
that's powerful.
That, and I'm like, God knew our entire story. God knew what I needed. God knew what Leland needed. And God has orchestrated all of the personalities in our community to help us, be pure and blameless before God and just continue to be edified. So personally, though, I grew up like the poster child mainstream kid. I mean, grades were easy for me. I obeyed authority. I picked up on social cues. I played sports. Oh my goodness. I even became like the president of all these different clubs in our school. But now God has given me a kid who's atypical. He rocks the boat. He kind of bucks the system that I thrived in. So that's a cool thing to grow into. And I've learned that mainstream isn't the best for everyone. But unfortunately, it's put a spotlight on the huge gap that the church has had, because we just assumed that we'd be able to bring our kids to children's service and we'd be able to go to church and we'd be able to participate in activities. And then one by one, we were like, whoa, the church does not accommodate very well people who have these different abilities, whether it's cognitive, whether it's social, whether it's physical differences. There's a huge gap, not just in the availability to serve the kids, but the support and what the parents need. I mean, I went through years of up and down depression, struggling, crying myself to sleep, feeling so ostracized because I did not know where I belonged. It was so unfamiliar, and nobody in my school knew what it was like navigating the trenches of raising a special needs kid. And I wanted so bad. I wanted so bad for somebody to say, I see you. I love you. Here is the path that I took. Here are some options. And I didn't have that. And I think that now maybe some of the dust is settling. God is pulling me up and saying, hey, it's time to talk about your experience on this side of things.
That's right.
So I hope that communicating a little bit boldly, not because I'm trying to trivialize it or put the church, on the stand or put them on trial, because we're all fallible. But really, there's a huge gap between the way special needs families are being served, how we can disciple them better, and the church still being stuck in a mainstream culture.
Yeah, let's put a pin right there, because I don't think that that's vilifying or putting down or judging the church. What I think you're doing is saying, hey, something's broken and it needs to be fixed. And I think a lot of times the callings and the ministries we end up with are when God shows us something's broken and he's like, I'm going to send you in to go help fix it. And sometimes it comes from personal experiences that we've been through, or difficulties, or places where we've had to learn to look at things differently. But I absolutely, from our pre-recording call, believe that you're going to be on the forefront of helping that broken piece get healed. I've unfortunately known so many friends who've gone through the same thing. I was part of a church plant that actually was just so beautiful. I think because we were smaller, we were able to do it with a family with special needs, unique ability, young man who was just so wonderful. But his family was made to feel comfortable. And he would have loud outbursts sometimes that were not under his control. And our pastor was so wonderful. He would not react at all. He would just keep going. They asked to sit in a particular place because that's what was comfortable. We made sure we saved those seats for them. There were people to help. David was his name. To do some different things sometimes when the parents maybe needed more attention from the sermon. And they really did step up, but I do believe it's because we were just starting as a small church campus. And as a church plant, it's a little bit different than the big church.
Mm-hmm.
But if we could do it, if that could be done, it's just showing me that there's the ability to do it. And I think somebody who knows what some of the challenges are needs to maybe help them just set up some different resources. Like you said, some things for families and parents to go to, some ways to teach the people who are helping teach the kids know how to deal with the children and know what to expect. Because a lot of people don't have that training.
I know. And it's hard because when I had a beautiful conversation with our pastor a few weeks ago. It was an hour-long meeting, and we're starting a special needs ministry at our church.
Mm-hmm.
And that, man, I am so pumped. I'm so excited. And if I am available for God to use me in whatever capacity, behind the scenes, wherever, I don't care. I just feel like this is a need that he has equipped me to serve in. And you can't necessarily have somebody who doesn't know what it's like being on this side of things, talking about these kind of things. So God never wastes a single experience. And so I thought, you know what, God, if my hands are open and if I am available, I cannot be scared about talking about my experience, these stories, because on behalf of those other families who are still in the dark days of figuring out diagnosis and not really knowing what they need, I think we don't have to know exactly what they need. We just have to say, we see you, you matter, and ready, you're welcome here at the church.
Yes, yes, amen. And that's amazing. I'm so glad you're starting to get involved and that you're having those discussions. I mean, your church community took care of you and your family when your dad had cancer. They stepped in and helped your mom and helped take care of you guys when she had to go places. I mean, part of you must have felt like, hey, the church should be helping my family now.
I am actually arrogant. I'm prideful in the sense of, oh, I'm fine, I don't need help. And perhaps I grew up very independent. So it took a lot for me to come to a place where I admitted I do need help. I cannot do this on my own. It took a lot for me, not because I thought I was Superwoman, but because I didn't want to burden anyone. I thought, oh, if I ask for help, I'm going to put them out and it's going to be too much. And everyone has their own stuff going on. But until we recognize that, yes, service is a gift and meeting the needs of others is a gift, but also a gift is allowing people to meet the needs that you have. That's a whole different ball. And I was ready to accept that help. And I know what the church is capable of. I've seen it, and I'm ready to be the hands and feet.
That's awesome. I mean, most of the time, it's those of us who are gregarious and outgoing, and we're the ones that love to serve other people that need the lesson of how to be a gracious receiver. I've had the lesson myself, and I'm taking away the joy from someone else of serving me if I don't let them know my need. And in the book of Acts, I mean, that was a beautiful time because, it talked about like how everyone's needs were met. Well, I think what happened is they were gathering together every day. They were gathering together to worship and pray and eat together and be together. And when they did, they would have discussions just like we do in community groups or small groups or however we gather, right? And somebody would talk about one of their needs. They wouldn't ask for help. They'd just say, hey, I need prayer for this, or this is happening, right? And then someone would sneak off or in the moment say, hey, I want to help you with that, and find a way to take care of their need. That's how I think it happened. So if they weren't willing to say what their need was, it can't get taken care of. And that happens to us too.
Exactly. I love Acts. I love this story, the foundation Acts sets to what we're supposed to be as a community. The first church, replicate that, break bread together, meet the needs of others. Like what's mine is yours. And that's really hard to find. It starts with one family being intentional And then hopefully it would spiral into something that just feels so special.
Yeah, I mean, that's what we should all be setting the bar for in our lives, to have that kind of community, whether it's just in those people we're meeting with outside of church, or the church at large is the ultimate goal. But it has to start with the smaller groups.
It does. It really does, because the entire one massive institution, whether it be a church, a school, community, philanthropist, thing, it always starts with small community, small connections, and then it just kind of ripples out. And that's been my experience, is that when you break down the big group into smaller groups, I mean, I have a master's in small group discipleship, and I understand the sociological part of all of it is in small groups is really where the intimacy comes in, where the connections come in, where the reliance on each other comes in. And the same thing's going to happen in the church. But we have to be able to open up those small circles even to accept those who are not mainstream.
Absolutely. Absolutely. I mean, I bet that people have often said that your son is a problem.
Yes.
I mean, that just hurts me to even say out loud. How did that make you feel?
It made me feel 100 things. And I'm trying to constantly reverse that narrative. And I haven't fully released that pain or the wounds that I have experienced through hearing that over and over and over. And I know that it's not me. I know that it's not just me. I know that my family is not the one who's ever felt this, but
that's right.
Everything that we have gone through, everything that Leland has ever been a part of, and I hate to say this, but we've been a part of YMCAs, of summer camps, of gym, childcare, of preschools, of private schools, of church. We've been kicked out of every single thing, single thing. And after a while, the wound hurts, and then you scab over, and then the scab is opened up again, and then all of a sudden you grow scars and thick skin where you don't want to let anyone in. You don't trust anyone.
Yeah.
So after hearing so often, he doesn't fit here, he's a problem, literally verbatim, I did hear a family at Chick-fil-A one time, unfortunately, Leland got in a little altercation with their son on the playground. Was trying to communicate, I'm so sorry, he thought your son was grabbing his leg, so my son kicked your son. I mean, it was a really sad situation. My son was 4. This was before diagnosis, before I truly understood the strategies on how to help Leland control or regulate his emotions. But this family came up to me. There was like 5 of them, and here I am with a newborn with Leland and Chick-fil-A. They pointed their finger at me and they just repeated, your son is a problem. He is a problem. If you don't get him fix, he's going to continue to be a problem his entire life. And in the moment, I was like, okay, fight or flight. I'm going to leave the restaurant. I am so sorry. I am so sorry. Took the route of I'm leaving. I don't want to cause problems. But that one instant has affected my entire mindset. And I have to work to surrender that to the Lord. Like, my son is not a problem, God. You have set him apart. You have a plan for us, and you saw all of it.
That's right.
But I have unfortunately used that story, and even if no one has said your son is a problem, anytime I feel unwelcomed, uncomfortable, I hear them saying your son is a problem, even if they're not putting him in that category. It's wrongful of me to assume that's what people mean, but it's a flaw in having felt hopeless for so long.
I'm so sorry that that's your experience. And I believe, from getting to know you and talking with you, that not only will you create a new scenario and a new way to move forward, but so will Leland as he grows up, because he's being raised by parents that see him as a child of God, that see him as wonderful and amazing and unique, and that are empowering him to be exactly who God created him to be.
Oh, that's awesome. I know God is working to work all things good. I mean, that he promises us that. And I see God working in all of my kids, and even in my personal strength to have positive parenting and respond differently based on what each of their personality types needs. I mean, it's a full-time job trying to regulate my emotions. I can't imagine Leland trying to regulate his emotions when everything in the world is so heightened and his stimulation is overwhelming. it's a whole world of learning.
Yeah, I can only imagine. I grew up, I'm 57, and I have a brother who's 5 years older than I am. And back when we were little, I was about 4, which is quite a long time ago. My brother has special needs, and the things that were said to him, the ways that people made him feel, watching my mom try to help him process that, watching her cry, watching him cry, me crying, yet all the things we did for him as a family to help him learn the things that he wasn't learning at school. They tried to mainstream everyone at that time. There was no special care or people to come in and give him support. So it was a whole nother world. And I do see that there have been a lot of advances in schooling and in education and just in the general population knowing more. But I am saddened that I don't see much change in the church. I know we only have, we have an hour for this, or this is that program or whatever, but there's got to be a way.
I think we have to be creative. I think through trial and error, and truly through families slowly but surely learning to trust a group, a institution, a group of a community that's already established. A lot of special needs families are not going to immediately trust the acceptance or the proper care of their child. I mean, statistics tell us that 20% of every U.S. household has a special needs individual in it. And further, 85% of those, they don't go to church. 55% of them is because there's a lack of support in the church. That's huge.
That's huge.
Hundreds of thousands of millions of people unchurched because of lack of support in the church.
And think about all of the big feelings, like you said, that you have to process as trying to be the parent, trying to grasp for, this is how I help, this is what I do. Okay. So your own feelings, your child's feelings, and who else needs Jesus more? Jesus came to heal the sick and to help those of us who needed help, and I just don't feel like just not providing something is a good enough answer.
Right. A lot of it is, oh, we don't have the resources, or it just takes time. And I believe all of that. I understand the mechanics of church. My husband's been working in ministry for 2 decades. I know what details happen behind the church, how it operates most of the time. But Jesus did not say, no, take the children away. He said, no, let the children come to me. And what was happening, the disciples saw that situation as an interruption of their program, an interruption of what they expected. And Jesus said, no, let this happen.
Yeah.
And it will all work out. And Jesus bent down, cared for those who were weak, different, struggling, really came to heal the sick. And then the parable of Jesus, I mean, the shepherd went to rescue the one and not just with the 99. He didn't say, well, the one is over there fine. I have the majority here. I'm going to just take care of them.
That's right.
He went, ran out, got that one. And I just think that's a beautiful picture of how we could go the extra mile to accommodate these hurting families when they feel so ostracized already.
Absolutely. I mean, there really are no words, because I've already felt righteously angry about this just myself, and I don't personally, have a child that I'm trying to get through this process with. It just upsets me. It seems wrong. So I'm sure that other people that will be listening, and that can key into what you're doing, I'll put information in your show notes about your books or ways to follow you. And you're probably going to hear from other people. And I do believe it's going to be those of you who are going through the experience that are going to come up with the solutions, the creative ways to make it work.
Yeah. I hope so. I'm ready. I'm available for it.
Well, that's all you have to do is say, God, I'm ready. Use me. Right. Now, can you share a little bit about your journey to diagnosis and where you guys are right now as far as healing from some of those things?
I love that you chose the word healing, because I think that's what it was. And I had to give myself the proper time to go through the steps to heal, the steps to accept this is the rest of our life. This is our story, and this is the situation that we're going to navigate, whether it's non-traditional or not.
Mm-hmm.
So Leland was diagnosed late in the game. Typically, when you have autism, you're diagnosed early because you show the stereotypical signs of nonverbal or the OCD tendencies where you line things up. Leland was very non-typical when it comes to that. He was very social. He was verbal.
Mm-hmm.
He did not play with toys age appropriately. He would throw instead of play. There was no imaginative exchange. So there were things that we just thought as our first child, oh, he's just really hyper and it's a little bit different. And there must be, probably ADHD happening. And all of those are accurate. But when he started preschool, his teachers started, kind of planting seeds of, I think there's something going on here. And that was offensive. I was in denial. What?
Yeah.
Something different about my kid? Because what parents might not tell you is that you want your kid to be different, but not too different.
Yeah.
You want your kid to stand out, but you want them to stand out and accelerate in all of the right ways, not all of this is going to be an extra speed bump for them to overcome ways.
Yeah. Yeah. I can totally understand that just from being a parent, because that is how you feel.
Yeah. And I think the healing came in stages. It was first denial, as I said, then it was the unknown, the waiting. Is there something? It's when you put your name on the waiting list for these evaluations and you figure out what it means to do this through insurance and not through insurance. I mean, that's a whole nother struggle. And then I would say the third step is, for me, it was the grief of, okay, this is something. I'm now comparing what I thought my life would look like. It won't be. And you have that period of grief, which also comes with guilt, because I don't want to feel guilty about grieving who my son is or what our next step will be, because this is who God created him to be. Work through that internally before then you can, help your son or your family walk through those healing steps. Another is you have to allow yourself to try and fail. Try 100 solutions. And if it doesn't work, try something else. I remember following all the recommendations from experts, and it felt itchy sometimes. And I had to build my backbone and say, no, that might have worked for that kid, but not my kid. And we tried something else. And so being willing to fail a lot, get back up. It doesn't mean you're a bad parent. It just means you're navigating these new roads and figuring out what's best. And then being willing, this is the hardest, truly. I think all of them have been hard, but laying down what you thought, like laying down your whole life to ensure that they have the support that they need and that you are able to somehow shape the life that you dreamed for them. And that's very, very self-sacrificing. This might be a child you have to take care of for the rest of your life. They might not ever be self-sufficient. I mean, that's a lot to swallow.
Yeah. I mean, what I'm hearing here are all really great, healthy things that you're talking about that make a lot of sense. But the overall thing that I'm hearing is making sure that you did allow yourself to grieve maybe what you had expected. And the biggest thing I hear here pushing through, and it's a lot about who you are and your personality and the things that are come from your past, perseverance, not seeing something not working as failure, but learning from it and moving forward. Like you've got this mama heart that, I mean, people talk about being a mama bear all the time, right? But a mama heart doesn't just want to take care of her cub, but she wants to get the cub to the point where the cub can take care of themselves and be who they were meant to be. That's when she's been a great mama. And that's what I see in you.
Thank you. I pray that is something I can offer to not just my three beautiful children, but eventually to just help other parents extend that love and that hopefulness of your child has a plan. It's different, but love them, love yourself through the process, because nothing is wasted. And I will say boldly that I have never been more thankful than having a child with special needs, because I am different in the best of ways. I have rewired my brain to understand positive parenting, I have separated myself from my ego and what I thought would make me happy, and really surrendering to God daily makes me happy, and it looks different.
Mm-hmm.
I've learned so much from Leland, and I think it's because God gave me exactly what I needed.
Yeah. I just think you guys have a beautiful story. And when we were talking in our pre-recording call, you were sharing how you knew in your heart that you were being called to be bold and that God was stirring something in you. And we talked a few weeks back, and you were telling me that you had been drawn to study Jeremiah 1 over and over again. And I challenged you to ask yourself why and how was God using that scripture to speak into your life? Could you share about that? Because now you've had a couple of weeks to think about it.
Yeah. Actually, I reread Jeremiah 1 today, and I was like, what is this, God? And I know what it is. It has been his personal letter to my heart for months now. Now, typically I study the word kind of chronologically, or I go through a book study, and it's very sporadic in the sense of you study a topic. But I found myself compelled to read Jeremiah 1 over and over and over. And that verse at the top, Jeremiah 1:5, I have, before you were born, I set you apart. I held strong onto that. I have it framed in my house now. Before my children were born, before I was born, God set us apart for this very purpose, for such a time as this. So I held true to that. And then he goes on to call Jeremiah, and he says, hey, go wherever I tell you to go. Say whatever I tell you to say. And don't say that you're too young. Don't say that you're not a good speaker, because you need to obey me. So I held on to that. I said, wow, God, you're asking me to go wherever you tell me to go and to say whatever you're telling me to say. I mean, every verse in chapter 1, I was realizing it was a personal message from him. Let go of your excuses. Don't be afraid of what other people are going to say or do, or how they're going to interpret your message. Before you were born, I set you apart for such a time as this. God has been cultivating this message of go out, share your story. I got you, and I will put the words in your mouth. So all of my excuses were obliterated. Like I had nothing else to complain about.
Don't you love how he can just do that? And, once the excuses are gone, though, I think when we start walking and what he's really calling us to do, we begin to feel really alive in a way that we weren't before. I think the excuses are like shackles.
Yeah. I thought, oh God, I'm too tired for this, or my plate is full. Don't you see my bandwidth? And I went to God as if he had never felt exhaustion. Oh God, woe is me. And sure enough, you know what else was in Jeremiah 1? For today I have made you strong. Okay, God. So today you're going to give me the energy I need to obey what you want me to do just for today. So I've developed this 24-hour mindset. God, I'm giving you these next 24 hours. Please give me the energy, motivation, and clarity to do exactly where you want me to go, to say exactly what you want me to say. And then the next morning I have to start fresh and surrender again.
Hey, that's what living life on mission looks like.
Mm-hmm.
When you go on a mission trip, you fill up on the word, you eat some good, healthy food, you go out all day walking around from village to village and sharing all the stuff that God gave you to share. And when you're all empty, you come back, you go to sleep, and you start over again. I think it's wonderful. We need to be able to have to depend on him every 24 hours.
It's a good feeling. And it's scary that I was so self-reliant for so many years, and it led to burnout.
You're in good company. I mean, because the world tells us that's what we're supposed to do. That's a success. I'm big on rest now, and people still don't get it. They consider rest as laziness, but I have one of the craziest, busiest, most upside down seasons of my life right now, carrying so many things and so many balls in the air, and really just trying to do them all well to honor God. And rest is part of that. I mean, that's what he told us we needed it. So I'm going to do that. And I find that if I don't get the rest, I can't do the work well.
Yes.
Now, you self-published a book called Love Fast, Live Slow, which I love that title. And actually, you got that from God. So can you tell us a little bit about that?
Yes. So speaking of rest, hello, wonderful segue. Love how God does that. This is not a new thing. My entire life, I've been addicted to achievement. I've been an overachiever. I was a hustler. If I'm not first, I'm last. The whole mentality the world tells you, the more money you have, the more success you have. Get to the finish line first. I was always running to the point where my mother would say, Laura, you need to rest. Yeah. And you know what I would tell her? I would say, Mom, I'll rest when I'm dead. I got to do this. Like, I got to succeed. I got to push through. And I thought that my endurance and my relentless running towards a goal was some type of superpower. But I realized it was rooted in my own self-reliance because my security came from my achievements. And so in 2013, my husband and I had this very candid conversation where we both felt there was something missing. We were both climbing the ladder in our careers. We were trying to figure out why this still is not satisfying us. And so one night, it was actually Easter Eve, if that's even called a thing. I was journaling. I'm a huge journaler. I've journaled since high school. And so this is kind of how I communicate with God. Write it out, listen, write scripture, and I just sit and listen. And so this particular night, I just felt there was something I craved. I was like, God, can you just simplify this for me? You know that I need something to narrow my focus, but I can't stop chasing these shiny objects. God, narrow my vision. I want to walk in your path, but I thirst and I crave all of the success the world is telling me will bring me satisfaction. And I said, just give me something. I need something tangible. So I was journaling and I started like writing the word slow. Oh, I do desire slow. That would be great. I do desire being able to have the margin to love people well, because when we're so busy, what do? We just take care of ourselves, don't take care of other people. And through, I would say, a couple of hours of back and forth, feeling really unease, love fast, live slow came into my mind, to my heart. I wrote it down and I thought, I can get down with that. That could be the pace that I live. That could be the 4-word mantra that I hang my life on. And I know that it aligns in obedience to what your word teaches us. And so the next day, I was excited, but also a little nervous about sharing something so vulnerable, because it felt so real to me that if I shared it with someone and they were like, well, that's cheesy, I would feel really embarrassed. So I shared it with my husband, and he's always supportive, but it was kind of like I was sharing him the deepest parts of my soul. Say, hey, what do you think about this? Love fast, live slow. I kind of feel like that summarizes, how we should live our life, maybe the pace that we need to change to. He said, that makes so much sense. It clicks. And I didn't feel like it needed any other explanation. Those 4 words are self-explanatory. Yeah. And it lines up so well with how Jesus lived. And I need simple, or I'll get caught up in all the other distractions in the world.
Well, I love how God gives us such personal revelation. I do the same thing. I journal a lot. That is most of the time that I really hear clearly from God. I either draw or write or both. And he just shows up so personally when you lean in like that. And this, to me, made sense as someone who does that as well. I could see him giving you this little nugget, this very special thing to hold on to just for you. It's beautiful. I love it. It makes tons of sense, and it's far from being lame. It's very catchy because it's simple, and I think people are looking for simplicity these days, looking for the way scripture is, and the way that God talks to us is like poetry. He's got all this wisdom, right? And all this knowledge, and he boils it down and uses just the fewest words possible, but it's rich with just level after level after level of meaning, like a poem is. And that's what this reminds me of.
That's amazing. And I am so glad that as you even heard of our book or recommended it by a friend, that you capture that feeling, because the book is really a collection of relatable stories that we wrote, really talking about the simplicity of living your life like Jesus in this stressful world. And through each chapter, it goes through an example of how you apply that to marriage, how you apply that to money, how you apply that to parenthood, how you apply that to your career. It goes on and on and on, touching on all of our real life areas of our life and saying you don't have to compartmentalize them all. Love fast, live slow. Unwind, relax a little bit, lighten up. God has it all under control. You don't have to carry the weight of the world on your shoulders.
Yeah. I mean, if nothing's taught us about that, it's the pandemic. Now, recently, you were asked to recreate the book and maybe merge some of these new ideas that you had with the original. How's that going? How's that process?
I was blown away. I recently met with an agent, a literary agent, which I'm new to publishing. I'm new to this whole world of if I want to self-publish or we want to traditionally publish. But I had the opportunity to meet with a literary agent, which is kind of like the middleman between you and pitching your book to a traditional publisher.
Mm-hmm.
And she said, hey, I really feel like your previous self-published book, Love Fast, Live Slow, hasn't reached its peak. How about you merge this new book proposal you're telling me and your old book, merge them together, and let's recreate something and pitch it so it reaches more people. I was blown away. I thought that makes so much sense.
Yeah.
It makes so much sense to me to fill the gap. So yes, it's going very well. We are officially in contract with that agent, and we are taking the next steps to put ourselves out there to see if any publisher wants to pick it up, and going through those next milestones. And again, I'm not doing this full time. Like, writing is not my full-time job. Motherhood is, homeschool is. So all of this is on the side, and it's just, I'm delighted to see God allow it to happen or create the space in my day to have cool conversations like this, or to be able to share writing in ways that I would never have thought possible, because I'm just saying, hey, I'm available. So if you want me to do something today, I'll work hard at it.
That's all you got to do. I mean, I'm literally doing this podcast from a closet in the house I grew up in while I take care of my aging parents, because I can't do my book signings and I can't do my speaking engagements, and I still wanted to share the gospel. And somehow God has taken me saying, hey, I'm available. I don't really have a lot of time because I'm doing what you told me to do with my parents, but in my free time, I still want to reach people for you. Next thing I know is getting a microphone and converting a closet. And here I am 6 months later, and he's put this thing all over the world.
That's amazing.
It is. God is so cool. In Ephesians, he talks about that he will do imaginably more than we could ever even conceive of. God has these things for us that if we just say, here I am, use me, that they're going to make us excited. They're going to be something that we love doing, and they're going to blow us away because they're way bigger than what our plans were.
Yes.
I can't wait to see what happens with the book. I'm sure it's going to be wonderful.
I'll keep you updated.
So, what is homeschooling like for you as a mom?
Well, I fought it for many years, and I finally surrendered to it, I would say the fall before COVID happened. I felt like it might have been the best solution for our family for many years, because my son does learn differently and he was struggling in school, but I thought we just had to find the right niche. We just had to find the right teacher. We just had to find the right school. Yeah. But we were really struggling. And finally, I said yes. And I knew that would require me to change my career goals. I knew that would require me to learn an entire new skill set that I have never fathomed doing. I never in my life ever wanted to homeschool. But once I said yes to God, there was this undeniable peace, this unexplainable peace, just like Philippians tells us, for Philippians 4:6-7. Like, there will be a peace that comes over you that is unexplainable. And since then, when COVID happened, I was ready. I said, you know what? I'm ready for this. It's fine. And I am saddened because I know a lot of people who were forced into having their kids home when they needed to work outside of the home. It was very stressful. And I have empathy for that, because if that's not what's best for your family, it was a struggle. But personally, homeschooling has felt like a breath of fresh air. It's hard. Yeah. But I see it as an extension of my parenthood. We wake up, I do my Bible study, we do breakfast, we do our chores, we do our reading and writing, and we play. and then we clean, and then they play with some science. Like, it's just an extension of our home life. So
That's
we're always
cool.
learning.
That's so cool. And you had told me that you went to school for sociology and psychology in undergrad. So it seems to me like God had you all prepared.
Yes. Oh, I see it now, clear as
Yeah.
day. I mean, especially in discipling my kids as a
Yeah.
group, that's sociology. Understanding how the brain works, special needs, that's psychology. It all fits in.
Yeah, it's funny. I had done an interview with another young lady whose son is autistic, and she also studied psychology and is a therapist. And when we were looking back through her story, she's like, "Wow, I never thought about that. God prepared me. Like, what better thing to know than to understand how the mind works and to be able to help him in these other ways?" So I think that's a really cool way to look back. I like to do that when we go through the podcast questions. I like to look at someone's whole life because I think it helps us see how absolutely perfectly God provides for us, even in the midst of difficulties, and how he doesn't waste a thing, and how he uses everything for its best. And he gives you the best life as long as all you do is lean into him, look to him.
Yeah. Yes, absolutely. You helped me see so much of that during our pre-recording call. You were pointing things out as I was saying them. I was like, I've never thought about that. That's an amazing connection. And I was so grateful for that first call, because since then I have connected so many dots to see where God is directing me. It's amazing.
That's awesome. That's something God's given me, this ability to have kind of a bird's eye view. And that was kind of how he directed me. He had a plan and a purpose for how I went about doing the podcast. And most people don't do a long pre-recorded call like I do. They certainly don't take handwritten notes, but all of those things and praying through every part of it, and then praying as I come up with the questions, really everything's turned over to him. And so it's his spirit that's sharing with me these bits of wisdom that I can share back for other people that you don't see in your own life. I mean, honestly, other people don't see maybe things you see in them, don't know what their spiritual gifts are, don't know what their best traits are. That's just who they think they are. But everyone around them knows. Everybody else can see it.
Mhm.
Now, you used to travel a lot when you worked at the corporate job, and they had wanted you to travel more. So you ended up putting in your 2 weeks notice. At that time, you started a fitness wellness business online. Do
Mhm.
you still coach women? Do you still do that business?
I do. It's been about 8.5 years, and people thought I was crazy, and understandably so. It was crazy to quit my job and do this thing that wasn't even established, this non-traditional job online.
Mm-hmm.
It's a leap of faith, and it really just felt like God's next best step for us. And now looking back, I saw that God was pulling me out of working outside of the home because he knew what kind of family dynamic he had given us.
Mm-hmm.
And I mean, it was a lot of work to start an online business from nothing, from the ground up. It took a lot of failure, a lot of determination, and really tuning out all the negativity or doubts that I felt. But yes, I still do it and I love it. And so it has fulfilled the dreams I have of being able to travel, host women retreats, um, being able to work career part-time while working at home with my
Mm-hmm.
kids. Like, it has blown my mind how God gave me the courage to say yes to something like that, knowing that almost 9 years later we'd be in the position where I'm still able to do that part-time while schooling my kids now. I
Yeah.
absolutely love it. It's amazing the community that I've experienced and had, because when you're at home, you don't have friends, you don't talk to any adults.
Yeah.
So I've been able to make a lot of close friendships through this business.
That's awesome. I just love that. I love that you're being provided for. Maybe you didn't really understand how much you needed it at the time. You knew you were stepping out in faith, and that's always a good thing. But it's cool for you to look back and see exactly how much of a provision it was.
Yeah, I love it. It really is so much fun, and personal accountability for me to maintain my fitness and nutrition, because I mean that's a spiritual discipline that God asked of me of, hey, if you want the energy, Laura, take care of the temple I gave you. Okay,
Yeah.
God.
Yeah, that we could do a whole podcast about that. Seriously, I mean, I don't understand people not trying to eat healthy, exercise, and do their best to get rest and be the best they can be. How are we going to carry out what we've been given to do?
Exactly.
Now, could you share a little bit with us about your husband? I always like to see who God puts together as a couple because it's never per chance. And he has plans for us individually, but he also has plans for us as a team or as a family. He sees us in families. He says, I'm the God of Abraham and Isaac and Jacob, and so I love to see who he's paired somebody with who feels they have a calling in their life. I know you said that he has worked with youth ministry for years.
Mm-hmm.
Tell us some more about him.
Yeah, I met Nick in college. We had the stereotypical cutesy college dating relationship. He was the cute worship leader with curly hair. I was the college cheerleader. Oh, I broke my arm, and that's how he would carry my books for me, and that's how we kind of became like a couple. It's just super
Oh,
mark, right? But
right.
Nick has always worked in ministry. He worked in student ministry for several, probably over a decade. Before we had kids, I was right there alongside him. After kiddos, obviously my role was more on the home base, and then he was out doing his thing. He has been the worship leader, the speaking pastor, all of the things. And now, beyond just ministry, he has a gift of he's a handyman. So he does a lot of home renovations and is able to make something old come new, and it's really refreshing. He's very hardworking. He's very funny. But the
Mm-hmm.
funny thing is, God always, even though we are so compatible, God does bring opposites, because we are opposite in the sense of his pet peeve is stubbornness.
Mm-hmm.
My peeve is like being temperamental. So meet Nick, meet Laura. We are going to get on each other's nerves. it's, it's awesome because he's very extroverted. I am
Mm-hmm.
typically introverted. He loves to speak on a stage. I would rather, speak one-on-one with someone. But we have learned a lot from each other, and I can see how God has taken each of our skill sets to ultimately serve the people we are supposed to serve.
Yeah, I love that. And it's funny because you told me you were introverted and you've told me again that you're introverted, but yet I follow you on Instagram and you seem very extroverted. And I love your sense of humor and your voice. So you might be introverted, but God uses you to speak at the times he wants you to speak.
Ah, thank you. So I'm hiding it well. I'm kidding.
Now, if you could give any advice to parents with kids with unique abilities, what would that be?
I have thought about this. Honestly, sitting in the seat where I'm at now, whenever somebody who was kind of over the main hump of diagnosis and navigating the best solution for your family, I was very hard hearted. I didn't want to hear advice because I was thinking, you don't know my story, you don't know my situation. I'm glad that worked for you. And people would say, oh, it'll get better. And I had a hard time believing that. Not because that these were not good, well-meaning people. I truly believe that God was speaking through them, but that I was so entrenched in the lie of the enemy of this is not how things are supposed to be, and I'm
Mm-hmm.
supposed to fix this. So the advice I would give them is not necessarily advice, but a let me pull you in, look you in the eye and say, you were exactly who your kids need you to be. You were doing great. Give yourself grace to go through the steps of denial, grief, acceptance, modifying your new normal, doing things your own way. You don't have to do things that the experts tell you to do, and giving that permission to feel all of the feelings, because I remember feeling guilty about grieving. I remember feeling guilty about being angry that things were this way, or feeling frustrated that others were not accepting our son's specific needs. But I just want someone to know that they are capable of being their child's best advocate. So go with their gut. God has chosen you for a reason.
Oh, that's wonderful advice. That's wonderful advice. And I think there are a lot of people leaning in when you just said that, who needed to hear that. And yeah, I think that when you end up in a situation that isn't cookie cutter, right? That it has so many different variables, the world wants to tell you this is the only way you can do that. And I'm sorry, but literally every person in the world is different, let alone someone who maybe processes the world differently, you know?
Mm-hmm.
And I love that you say that you're exactly the right parent, because I believe that God knew your heart and knew what you and your husband would do and how you would advocate. And same thing for anyone listening out there. You know, God is not surprised.
Exactly. He's never going to waste a thing, and just rely on him, because you cannot do it on your own. You cannot forge through, push through, willpower through this on your own.
Yeah. Also good advice. Now, my favorite question I'm going to ask now, and everyone who listens knows, I just think the answers are always so good. If you could give your younger self any advice, what would that be?
I used to think, this is so terrible. I used to think I could do all things. My college quote was, go big or go home. Like, if you dream it, go for it, achieve it. And now I'm like, whoa, if I really had the desire to be a BMW, no matter how hard I wished it, it would not come true. So, like, an apple can't want to be a watermelon and make it happen. God has created each of us specifically how we're supposed to be. I just read this and I'm trying to remember where. Oh, I think it's in Ecclesiastes. It's in my journal, of course, but not hidden in my heart quite yet. But it's like, there's no point arguing with God about who you're going to be. He's already destined it. He has already planned it. Just say, what do you want from me? Who am I? Shape me into the pure and blameless fruit, person that you want me to be. Play out your fruit of your salvation. I know I'm twisting all these words up because I get excited about the hopeful potential that somebody who is in my shoes, who is addicted to achievement, who is chasing success in all the wrong areas, but still feeling a void. You are not good enough. You are not as awesome and important and cool and strong as you think you are, but God is. And that's so hard to hear from somebody who is struggling with their ego.
Yeah.
You either are going to struggle with your ego or you're going to lay it down, because you're still always going to be on your knees looking up at God.
It's excellent advice. And you're right. Maybe some people that need to hear that might not be able to receive it right now. But
Too much of it.
As a Christian in a family that not everyone has accepted Jesus, I look at some other members of the family and see where they found their identity. And it's always very interesting to me, because their identity isn't right. It isn't real. It isn't the thing that they can put as the foundation of their entire life. And so I see these places where they need to be in control or grasp at things or have things happen a certain way to make that identity function. Whereas with God, anything can happen. And I'm always a child of God. As his daughter, I always have access to him. He has access to me. I don't have to worry. I can trust in him. But if I need to be A, B, and C, well, then I might have to manipulate C and D and a little over there on X for it to work out in this situation. And it's sad for me to watch that.
Yeah. I'm all about chasing dreams. And really, I think the Bible teaches us that he wants Christ followers and surrendered broken hearts to be in leadership. I think that he has equipped us to lead and
Absolutely.
influence people. And by no means should we let our excuses of being introverted or being shy or not having the right skill set to stop us from pursuing, a higher level of achievement or a better job or whatever it is that's your goal. The goal is not sinful, but it's who we're
No.
on to get there
Yeah.
that can become the idol.
Yeah, it's about the identity, really, because I'm all for chasing dreams too. And anytime God asks me to do something I have absolutely no idea how to do, which seems to be a lot over the past few years, I've learned to just say, okay, well, I don't know how to do that, but you do. So let's just do it. And it's always been an amazing, exciting, wonderful thing.
Mm-hmm.
I don't need to know, you know?
Yeah. I
But
don't want to mess it up. I don't want to know every step in his plan because then I'll manipulate it or try to control it.
you just be the best you can be. And if we're sitting with Jesus every day, we're the best disciple we can be. We're trying to be consecrated, lined up with the word. Our hearts are to give him glory and to show him how much we love him back. He already knows what's exciting to us. He already knows it's going to be exciting because that's what he created us to do. So we just have to keep ourselves where we need to be usable, cleaned out, and usable. He can pick us up and he can use us whenever he wants.
Exactly. Wonderfully said.
Well, thank you. And Laura, just thank you so much for joining me today. I know your schedule is crazy and I know you're doing so many things, but I do really, I'm excited to get your story out there because I do really believe a lot of people need to hear it. And I am going to be sharing in the show notes social media links, ways to take a look at ebooks or the self-published book we were talking about, so people can, if they want to look at what you're doing. I think it's definitely worth it, everyone. There's a lot of good stuff in there. And it's just been a pleasure to have this time with you today. I'm very encouraged.
Me too. I'm thankful. Thank you so much for taking the time to not just meet with me once, but twice. Your heart is so encouraging, and I was ready to have this conversation with you, knowing that you've already covered it in prayer. So thank you.
It was my pleasure, and I hope you have a wonderful day.
All right, you too. Thanks.
Thanks. Hey, so I just want to thank you so much for spending your time with me. And I want to challenge you to go out today and to just take notice and to stop and really look around and find at least one good thing, one thing to be thankful for. If you do that today, you're going to find so many more things tomorrow without even trying. Because once you start, you begin to see what's always been there. And if you need a refill, you can come join me again for another cup. Make sure to subscribe and have an awesome day and go be grateful.